Hello, welcome to Mart's garage. Here's my Sedan. It's up, running, driving, and the only issue I've got at the moment is that the engine hasn't got much in the way of oil pressure. But that engine ought to be viewed as a temporary engine, because that engine there is the one that I ought to be running. I only ran this engine briefly after changing the crank, because it had some rattles and a lot of endfloat on the crank and oil coming out around the breather area. There's two or three things I want to address on this engine. One of them is the crank endfloat, and I've bought Babbitt material to build up the thrust faces on the bearings. So that's the first job I want to do. So I need to put that in the engine stand, get it upside down, get the rear mains out, and prepare them for adding the Babbitt to the bearings. I've just had word with the guy that's supplying the metal for me for the bearings, and it's on its way. I want to pull the inlet manifold off and have a look at the PCV valve. I'm thinking that the rattling, because it was only at wide open throttle, may have been induced by ignition timing, and I haven't thought this through to the nth degree, but possibly brought about by the excessive crank end float changing the timing between the cam and the crank. So those three issues, I'm ready to have a look at those. Hopefully none of those three issues are particularly serious, and I'm hoping that I might be able to do a relatively simple repair, some relatively simple repairs, and get this motor back up and running. When I do get it up and running, it can go back in there. Back in a bit. Hello, I've got the motor up on the stand. I've taken all the bolts and washers out of there. I'm just going to lift the manifold off now. There's the PCV. Listen. Can't hear the PCV rattling. So what does that mean? I thought you're supposed to be able to hear these rattling. Oh, you can hear it rattling now. Hear that now? You can hear that rattling now. The point is, why was it jammed all the way up there? I've got a couple more of these. Well, I don't know if it's the same. I'll go and have a look. Just need to go on there like that. And then this goes in there. Just pushes in. That's like a baffle that I made up. Don't know if it works. Like everything I do, it's all experimental. Okay, I found a little box with my PCV valves in that I bought years ago. That's the one I've just took off. And I've got these two. This one looks marginally smaller. Now, these come with a 90-degree thing on it, but I've just pulled that off there. But I don't know whether I might reinstate it and have it horizontal and not have this. Now I think I'll reinstate it like it was. I'll press that into there and put it back on with a piece of pipe like that. Okay, that looks the same. Yeah, and then I've got one more there. Okay, I'll go and get this in here and then I'll refit it on there. Righto. But at least I found that the valve was jammed, which would indicate that is probably what the problem was. I wouldn't be surprised if I can hear this rattling actually when it runs. Well, if it does, I can always take it off and come up with some sort of a horizontal application like I had to do on the truck. Or it might quieten down after it gets a bit, you know, a bit of gum round it. Not much to do here. Bit knocked about this manifold actually. Okay, that can stay there. Might as well just put that away. Would probably work actually. Righto, I'll take the oil pan off then. Be lazy, I'll be lazy and use my gun. You got to decide which way you want the gasket to go, you know, with the oil pan or down on the block. It's a shame to disturb these gaskets because they really were sealed well. Don't want to break that one. Right, okay, I'll take the oil pump off. There's safety wire on it, so you have to cut the wire. Okay. Right, I'll put that in with the manifold bolts rather than with the sump bolts so that I don't get them mixed up. Right, now when I take this out, it's going to drip, isn't it? I think I'll just put it down there on the tray. These French caps have little pry tabs on them. Quite good really. Problem is the tab washers tend to kind of bind up a bit. Oh, there we go. Okay. Oh, okay, good. Bearing looks nice. Yeah, the bearing looks okay. Considering this crank was in the shed, you know, and it had a little bit of surface rust on it. This is the problem. Kind of watch here. Right, now, how does one get the rear bearing out? There's old tricks, aren't there? I remember reading about them years ago in books when I was a kid. But one of the things I remember seeing was where you put a split pin in there. You hammer the head of the split pin flat and it catches on the bearing and you rotate the crank and it pulls it out. I've got a split pin Okay, it looks like it's sticking out just a tiny bit too far. It has moved the bearing though. Because this is the undoing direction, I can't use the crank bolt because the crank bolt's loose. Look at that. Top tip. Top tip. Cars and Cars Conversions, 1970. Should come off now. Yeah, that's good, isn't it? Easy. There we go. Quite nifty, really, wasn't it? Worked well. I might need that to help put it back in again after. So that's the area we're interested in. The crank looks fine. Everything's okay there, just kind of generally making a mess. Here are the bearings. So I need to build up about 15 thou, let's say, on one side. So what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a chunk of metal, put it on the lathe and turn it, turn the diameter of it so that this bearing is just a nice fit. And what I will do, I will clamp this onto it with hose clamps. I think I'm just going to do it on the one side. When I put the metal onto there, I will then skim it down so that this dimension is 15 thou bigger than what it is now. Okay, right, so that should be interesting, shouldn't it? I'll bring you back when there's more to show. Hello, welcome to Mart's Garage. Here I have a pair of main bearings. Here I have an odd main bearing shell. Here I have some sticks of Tinman sticks, 250 grams each. I've got 4 of them, and this is white metal bearing material, which is, you know, Babbitt. Here I have some Baker's fluid flux. What I intend to do is build up the thrust face on here with this Babbitt material, like that, and then machine it back to a certain dimension. But these are the only bearings I've got. I don't have any more. But this is one that's, you know, around. So I thought I would try it on this one first. I don't know quite how I'm going to heat it up, but I don't want to get it too hot because I don't want to melt the bearing material from there. Okay, so yeah, so that's what I intend to do. Never done it before, never actually seen it done. You know, I haven't seen a YouTube video or anything showing me how to do it. So it will be interesting to have a go and try it. Because I've never done it before, although I have done soldering, I am really unsure what to do. Okay. Right. So I think what I'll do, I'll get a little tub and put some of this into it, then I can dip that in and I can use, you know, some to put it on there, can't I? How am I going to warm it up? I was told to use a soldering iron. I wonder about using a little torch. I'll try this. If I have a problem with the other metal melting, I'll not use it. Okay, right, so what does that tell me? Melting the stick wasn't a good idea because it put a great big blob on it, and it's all gone over the bearing there, and it's gone over the bearing a little bit there. I haven't actually melted the bearing material away. This bearing is a used one, remember, and I have put a fair bit of material on there. It's well, I think that would actually probably, if I can do another one that's tidy like this area here. Yeah, okay. So these are the ones for reel then. T for thrust. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't really want the flame playing down there, do I? Let's maybe have it like that. Okay. Right then. What do you think of that? I hope I've got enough material on there. Right, that's 79 thou. That's 91. So it's only 10 thou, isn't it, of material? That's 114. 99. 102. 89. This one's going to be hot. I think this one's better. I think I'll try and put a bit more on here. This is where it all goes wrong, isn't it? Let's try and put a bit more on where it's... I don't know if you noticed, but I was trying to use the wrong end of that. The other end that was preheated went a lot easier. Okay, it's one of them where sort of it's probably best to try and be a little bit conservative rather than overdo it, because you risk getting it too hot and melting the actual bearing material. Okay, I will let those cool down, and what I'm going to do now is go and get a chunk of metal and turn it down on the lathe to the bearing size, probably plus 5 thou, something like that. Then I'll clamp these round. First thing I'll do is hand file the edges so that they clamp together and take off any extra material. And then I will clamp them around the mandrel in the lathe and get a tool and try skimming the surface, and then try and end up at the dimension that I want. But what I think I ought to do first, I suppose, is clean up all this, because this is flux, isn't it? It's like an acid. I ought to wash these. I think I might go and wash those, you know, in water. Get rid of this, chuck this away. Well, I've used about, I don't know, I've used about 2 inches off that stick. So there's enough here to do, you know, many bearing repairs if the method is successful. I think I'm okay just trying to do it on the one face. I'm sure the crank can tolerate being moved in the one direction only. It won't, you know, there's enough give that it can run in any given position in a, you know, in a given sort of range. There's enough baker's fluid there to last a lifetime as well. Anyway, yeah, so if you're in the UK and you need anything like this, the place that I got it from was, I'll show you the label. If you're in the UK and you need anything like this, the place that I got it from was Bill Shorthouse Metals, and you can just Google him, and when you ring up, it's actually Bill Shorthouse that answers the phone, so, or his wife. So it was very good actually. He was, you know, I was able to chat with him, tell him what I wanted to do. He told me what I needed, and sold me all the stuff. Okay, right ho. Yeah, a little bit of practice, you know, practice. I wouldn't say practice makes perfect, but a little bit of practice helps, doesn't it? That just broke off, didn't it? That's good. And I don't seem to have affected the bearing surface at all. That'll be interesting, won't it then, to machine that? I think I'll be a bit shy of the edge. I might chicken out and put these towards the front and just have the original bearing surfaces there to the back. Who knows? I'll go and wash these because there's flux on them. Kind of aware of what I should be touching and not touching. I've cleaned them up, I've washed them. I'll be back when I've got more to show. Hello. Right, so I've turned this mandrel. Here are my bearing halves, and they kind of fit on there. The mandrel is about 1/8 thou oversize. There's a little bit of stuff on the bearing surface there, so I've put a chamfer on the end there so that it still fits flat. So can you see that there's a little bit of rock there? So what I think I'm going to do is put a hose clip round. There's a place right in the middle where I can put a hose clip. Then I'll snug them down on that shoulder there. There's a shoulder. So they'll snug down on the shoulder. I can get a micrometer across the two flanges to get the dimension, and I'll work out where I want that dimension to be, and then I'll carefully start skimming them down. Well, there's the bearing in place. I put the hose clip that way around so that that's like a trailing edge. It runs nice and true. I've prepared a high-speed steel tool there, which I'm going to use to try and skim it. So I'll get set up for that now. Blimey, don't take much to clear it up, you know, clean it up to a surface. Better start measuring. Okay, these are set on the dimension of the crank. So this dimension across here, if you're measuring on a thingy bob, you know, a bit of surface, well that's only 1/8 thou over. So let's say I want 4 thou clearance. That's 1/8 thou over. So if I take 12 thou off, it'll be 4 thou under, won't it? That's 0. I'll do 6 thou. Okay, the crank is 2.272, and this measured in between the jaws is 2.273. Okay, so if I take 5 thou off without touching anything, if I take 5 thou, that ought to be 4 thou under, hadn't it? So let's go for that. You have to watch the scale on there because it's measured in 2 thous rather than 1 thous. Well, that don't look like it's cutting. Maybe it is, yeah, maybe it is. Well, I think that's gone past, okay. Right, so that was 2.272, so we're looking for sort of 68, aren't we? 2.268. Yeah, round about there anyway. 67, 2.267. That's actually a little bit more there. There might be an anomaly on this flange here, slight anomaly there. Yeah, about 6.9 there. That's all right. Yeah, what can you do? You know what I mean? I'm not a production facility. Let's just take a skim across this face here. Get some of the bits off, some of these lumps off. I don't mind leaving plenty of material on if I can. It's a little bit uneven here and there, but you know, no, I think that's all right. Okay, do you want a bit of a closer look? So there we are, there's the bearing surface. I need to put a couple of little grooves in for oil, which I can file. But yeah, I think that's not too bad. Yeah, I think that's not too bad. You know, for a first attempt. I don't know if I'll use it as the thrust surface or just the front thrust surface. I might use it as the thrust surface, because you know, there's plenty there to wear, isn't there? You know, there's hardly anything on the other one. Okay, righto, hope you found that interesting. Let's see what it's like when we come to try and fit it. I'm just hoping it all stays in place. Righto, I'll bring you back when there's more to show. Cheers then.